Tonight, a race against time and the flu. The government now says we'll have only about a third of the H1N1 vaccines it hoped to have by mid-October. I'm Maggie Rodriguez. Also tonight, public health insurance. The president still wants it, but he's not insisting on it, drawing anger from both supporters
We are the majority
and opponents.
No.
Hurricane season brings rain to Florida, but it's really needed in Texas, suffering through its worst drought on record. And the most amazing performance at this stadium may be in the broadcast booth.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie is off. We're beginning tonight with a possible setback in the battle against the H1N1 flu virus. It's expected to make a comeback this fall, and U.S. health officials had predicted 120 million doses of vaccine would be available by mid-October. But today, they said no, we'll only have 45 million. CBS News medical correspondent Dr. Jennifer Ashton tells us what's behind the change and what it will mean.
Just 2 weeks into a national testing program to see if the H1N1 vaccine is actually safe, comes word there will be far fewer shots available in the fall when a national vaccination program is scheduled to get started.
We're in a race between the vaccine and the virus, and this gives the virus a little bit more of an advantage.
In July, it was projected the 120 million doses would be available by October, with another 75 million in the following months. Now, citing production delays, the government has been told by manufacturers only 45 million doses will be ready by October 15th, with approximately 20 million doses being delivered each week thereafter.
The fact that we have fewer doses, I think, actually will focus attention. It will mean that we all will have to be much more explicit about whom we will ask to show up.
The government says it still expects to receive the same amount of vaccine as originally planned, just on a somewhat longer schedule. Experts say that now, kids may jump to the front of the line.
The children excrete more virus. They're less hygienic, and they're very enthusiastic about kissing Mom, Dad, and Grandma and Aunt Susie. They're the great distributors.
Dr. Jennifer Ashton joins me now. My first question hearing this is, what does this delay mean?
Well, Maggie, all along health officials have expected some bumps in the road, and this seems to be one of them. Most likely this delay will just prolong the process, meaning that the people in those high-risk groups will still get vaccinated. It just might take a little longer, possibly weeks to months.
That seems like it could be potentially dangerous if they have to wait.
It depends on how this new flu behaves, Maggie, this fall. And the good news is that at this point, the regular seasonal flu vaccine production does not seem to be affected, so the people who want and need to get that vaccine will be able to do so.
And that flu is especially deadly.
Absolutely. We have to remember that it kills approximately 36,000 Americans every year, and we can't forget about the regular seasonal influenza.
All right, Dr. Jennifer Ashton, thank you. Now we move to the debate over health care reform and whether it will include a public insurance option. Tonight, that idea, long supported by President Obama, appears to be on life support, in danger of flatlining. Chief White House correspondent Chip Reid traveled with the president today to Phoenix.
At the National Convention of the VFW, the president today rejected speculation that health care reform will hurt the nation's veterans.
No one is going to take away your benefits. That is the plain and simple truth.
But the president did nothing to quell another health reform controversy that erupted this weekend when he seemed to back away from the so-called public option. For months, the president has strongly advocated a government insurance option to compete with private plans.
I'd love to have a debate, just all out, anytime, Oxford style if you'd like.
But at a Colorado town hall Saturday, he seemed to suggest he could take it or leave it.
The public option, whether we have it or we don't have it, is not the entirety of health care reform. This is just one sliver of it, one aspect of it.
The White House insists that nothing has changed, that the public option is still the president's first choice. But many liberal activists are deeply disturbed that a centerpiece of health reform could be reduced to a sliver. Today, outside the president's speech, reform supporters said he's compromising too much. Across the street,
it's lies! All lies!
Reform critics said a public option is the first step toward government-run health care.
Kill the bill! Kill the bill!
It's an issue that puts the White House in a serious bind. Why? Because some moderate Democrats predict health reform will die in the Senate if there is a public option, but many liberals say it will fail in the House if there is not.
Having a plan that doesn't have the public option is worse than doing nothing at all.
The only way out is to find a compromise, perhaps some form of nonprofit cooperative. But Democrats concede that reaching agreement will be a Herculean task that could well determine whether health reform lives or dies. Chip Reed, CBS News, Phoenix.
A lot of people aren't clear on how those health insurance cooperatives would work. Nancy Cordes has more on that tonight.
I can't think of a single program that the government does and does it well, and this scares the hell out of me.
It's no wonder many Americans are perplexed about a public option or confused by co-ops when even lawmakers struggle to explain them.
If it were a plan, it wouldn't be an option.
The public option, as proposed, would be run by the Department of Health and Human Services, which also oversees Medicare. With lower administrative costs, the government could offer lower insurance premiums than the private sector, giving uninsured Americans a more affordable option.
One version of a public option would be like the way the Medicare program is run today. It sets regulated prices, it's take it or leave it for the doctors, and it's big enough that the doctors, the hospitals, the healthcare providers generally have to take it.
But with Republicans universally opposed to a public plan,
the government really isn't a fair competitor.
Some centrist Democrats are seeking a middle ground, proposing regional or state health insurance cooperatives instead. The co-ops would be started with government seed money, but then turned over to the members themselves to manage. Because the co-ops would be not-for-profit, any money left over from members' annual payments would be reinvested, theoretically bringing costs down for everyone.
The co-op is, in a sense, sort of halfway there. It's part of the way there. It's not run by a private company. It's run by the community.
Back in the 1930s and 40s, hundreds of healthcare co-ops were established, but just a handful exist today, like the one run by Dr. David Orrs for 800 New York City restaurant workers.
Once they're out of the way, the for-profit private insurance companies like Oxford and Aetna, once they're not involved, the cost goes down by 80%.
The co-op idea is getting lawmakers' attention, but proponents of the public option argue that without the public option, these co-ops could never compete with private insurance the way the government could. Maggie?
Nancy Cordes in Washington. Thanks, Nancy. The prospect of health insurance co-ops sent health-related stocks higher today, but the overall market was sharply lower. Investors having second thoughts about the chances for economic recovery. The Dow lost 186 points today, or 2%, but it is still up nearly 40% since March. Now to what the government says is the largest case of credit and debit card theft ever in this country. A federal grand jury today indicted Albert Gonzalez on charges that he hacked into the computer networks of 7-Eleven and 4 other companies to get access to 130 million accounts. Gonzalez was once an informant for the Secret Service, and he was already behind bars, awaiting trial on another hacking case. Now we move to the war in Afghanistan. In his address to veterans today, President Obama called it, quote, a war worth fighting and fundamental to America's defense. Right now, U.S. forces are hunting down insurgents who are out to disrupt Thursday's presidential election there. The heaviest fighting is in Helmand province. Chief Foreign Affairs correspondent Lara Logan is on the front lines, south of Garmsur.
British soldiers and U.S. Marines are both battling the Taliban in southern Afghanistan. Here, it's the British who are under attack, deep in Helmand province, hemmed in by Taliban fighters.
So the fire was coming about 400 meters northwest.
In areas like this, where the Taliban is so strong, there's no possibility of voting in this week's presidential election. Militants have used intimidation and threats to scare Afghans away from the polls, saying they'll cut off their ink-stained finger, the mark that voters will carry to prevent fraud. In other parts of Helmand, U.S. Marines have been fighting to clear the Taliban out, in the hope that some people here will be able to vote.
While the fight in the south is against the Taliban, in the northeast of Afghanistan, the U.S. is battling an old ally, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. Backed by the U.S., he helped defeat the Russians in Afghanistan. Now he's trying to defeat the U.S.
CBS News was able to interview Hekmatyar through an intermediary who took our questions to him at a secret location. We found him as defiant as he was the last time we spoke to him a year ago. Our jihad and resistance will continue until such time that the last soldier of the occupying forces has left our country, he told CBS News. He claims to have 25,000 fighters, but no one is able to verify that number. What is not in doubt, U.S. troops in Hekmatyar's area have been facing an increasingly deadly enemy. This insurgent video shows a small U.S. outpost under sustained attack and U.S. soldiers being airlifted to safety. With the election now only 3 days away, neither Hekmatyar nor the Taliban has been able to stop enthusiastic campaigning across the country. And in spite of the violence and threats, millions of Afghans are still expected to cast their ballots in Thursday's election. Lara Logan, CBS News, Helmand Province, southern Afghanistan.
Here in our part of the world, the Atlantic hurricane season is finally kicking into high gear with a tropical trio. Claudette hit the Florida Panhandle as a tropical storm this morning. Rough seas and strong winds knocked some boats around, but there was little damage. What's left of Claudette is now dumping heavy rain in the southeast. Anna, as you see there, is now a tropical depression, but could bring flooding to Haiti. And Bill is the first hurricane. It's expected to intensify and head towards Bermuda by the end of the week. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, thousands have ripped up their AARP cards. Is the organization losing touch with members over health care reform? President Obama once thought he had the AARP on board, as he put it, on his plan for health care reform, but he has since had to back off on that claim. The AARP is a powerful lobby for seniors. It has 40 million members with an average age of 64, most of whom vote. But tens of thousands of them don't like the overhaul plans, and that's created a problem for the organization that represents them. Cheryl Atkinson has this exclusive report.
CBS News has learned that up to 60,000 people have canceled their AARP membership since July 1st, angered over the group's position on health care. Elaine Gardiani has been with AARP for 14 years.
I'm extremely disappointed in the AARP.
Retired nurse Dale Anderson, 12 years.
I don't want to be connected with AARP.
Many are switching to the American Seniors Association, a group that calls itself the conservative alternative.
1,000 new members today so far. That's good.
Last week alone, they added more than 5,000 new members. Our camera was there Friday when the mail came.
It's nice to see that someone still thinks we senior citizens are not idiots.
Letters were filled with cut-up AARP cards.
I think that probably the seniors are most upset about the cuts in Medicare.
The American Seniors Association is flat out against President Obama's plan, which calls for $313 billion in Medicare cuts over 10 years. The AARP is widely viewed as supporting the president.
We have the AARP on board because they know this is a good deal for our seniors.
The AARP called the president's statements inaccurate, saying it hasn't endorsed any plan or bill. Some were left with the feeling that AARP was waffling.
I feel that they're supporting it through the back door and telling their members that they're not through the front door.
There has been some confusion as to whether AARP is supporting or endorsing the president's plan or not. Which is it?
AARP has not endorsed any plan at this point.
Yet the AARP's Cheryl Mathias couldn't find anything to quibble with, including the Medicare cuts, which she says will not affect benefits.
So is there anything in President Obama's plan that you don't like?
We agree with many of the ideas, but we actually haven't seen provisions in legislation yet. So we are not, we're going to reserve judgment until we see them.
Meantime, the AARP's image suffered with this town hall meeting August 4th, already seen by hundreds of thousands on YouTube. Faced with skeptical questions from the audience, the AARP representative ends the meeting abruptly.
I'm done.
When the discussion continues, she pulls the plug on the microphone. AARP says for a group with 40 million members that adds hundreds of thousands each month, losing 60,000 is just a drop in the bucket. But to the much smaller American Seniors Association, it's a flood. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
A lot of people old enough to join the AARP are apparently indulging in a risky ritual often associated with college-age Americans, binge drinking. It's classified as having 5 or more drinks over a short period of time. A study today of people ages 50 to 64 says that nearly a quarter of men and 9% of women admitted to binge drinking in the previous month. Now to another health problem, sleep apnea. More than 12 million Americans suffer from it, a type of obstructed breathing that leads to chronic wake-ups. More than just a nuisance, a study out today says that people with severe cases are at 46% greater risk for death. Sleep apnea has been linked to serious illnesses like heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. When we come back in Texas, an abundance of snakes of all things from a shortage of water. This has been a long, hot summer in Texas. Little rain, triple-digit temperatures, and a record drought. Don Teague tells us the parched soil there has brought economic ruin to some and dangerous visitors to others.
In Austin, business for snake catcher Tim Cole is good, maybe too good.
Typically in the summer, I'd get maybe 1 a week when it's hot like this. I'm probably getting 6 to 8 during the week right now.
Snakes are on the move, searching for water as Central Texas suffers from its worst drought in recorded history.
And I was like, that's a rattlesnake. That thing just like that.
And too often that search leads snakes to backyards, like this rattlesnake in Manor, discovered just 4 feet from children.
It was completely silent, which was kind of eerie.
Byron Phillips stepped on a copperhead in his front yard.
That's not natural. The ground's moving underneath me. That's not right. Pow.
He's one of more than 40 Austin area snakebite victims treated so far this year, compared to just 36 for the entire year in 2008. Phillips will recover. But with 77 Texas counties experiencing exceptional or extreme drought, agriculture losses could top more than $4 billion. And it's happening in the auction barn, where ranchers are selling off cattle at a loss because pastures can't support them.
Some of them are selling completely out, some of them are trying to hold on. And if you're depending on cattle for your livelihood, you've got a big decision to make.
Droughts, of course, come and go, but the lack of rain this year in Central Texas is historic, even revealing a hidden past. The falling waters of Lake Buchanan feature a new tourist attraction, the remnants of Bluffton.
More than likely it was a fireplace.
Flooded over when the lake was filled in 1937, the one-time stagecoach stop is beginning to resurface.
To me, it's very interesting. You're walking through history.
A ghost of the past revealed by a drought for the ages. Don Teague, CBS News, Austin.
Coming up next, a trip to the ballpark with an announcer who has a perspective on the game you will find hard to believe. Finally tonight, announcing baseball games on the radio takes a special talent, using words to paint a picture of what's happening on the field. And on that score, Kelly Kobiella tells us the man you're about to meet is in a league of his own.
Buenas noches, Enrique. Buenas noches, Enrique.
They call him the Volcano.
Están liderando las divisiones.
From the first pitch
Juan Carlos Tosque
to the last out,
se enfrenta a Josh Johnson.
Enrique Oyu, the Spanish voice of Tampa Bay Rays baseball,
En la primera base, Ross Close.
starts talking
Cody Ross en el jardín central.
and just doesn't stop.
Designado Jorge Cantú.
When you listen to him talk, you can visualize what he's saying. Now, the question is, how does he visualize it?
How, indeed, when he's never seen a single game. Enrique Oyu has been blind since birth.
I'm struggling to understand this, and it's probably because...
You're not the only one. I do that too.
While his partner in the booth calls the play,
Un doble automático.
Enrique listens to the crack of the bat and the sound of the crowd to fill in the colorful details.
He listened to the radio when he was a kid, and he heard the TV broadcast, and that's what he always wanted to do, and he would never let anybody tell him he couldn't.
How you doing, Stan?
Enrique talks to everyone
Doesn't it get down to instincts anyway at the end of the day?
and soaks up everything.
He's talking to me about base running and instincts right there. How do you know instincts without ever having seen a base runner? I have no idea.
There's certain things that you just feel. You just go and feel for it, plus homework, plus everything else.
Bye, love you.
Like an understanding wife. They met 11 years ago on a blind date.
I think it was love at first sight for him.
I don't know about that, but
He's 1-0 with 3.10 ERA.
against the race, yeah.
Every morning, she reads him the sports page.
Para Detroit.
And every baseball evening, she whispers sweet statistics in his ear.
You know, sometimes he'll say, you missed that. Yeah, I did. Okay. You know,
Sometimes he sees things that you don't.
correct.
What's truly remarkable is not how Enrique Oyu sees baseball.
You don't see yourself as being really amazing?
No. I think myself as just being a blind schmuck that's been fortunate to get a microphone.
A passion for life as much as the game. Kelly Kobiella, CBS News, Tampa.
He is something. And with that, we wrap up the CBS Evening News tonight. For Katie Couric, I'm Maggie Rodriguez. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you in the morning on The Early Show. Good night.